Hey everyone, it's John here from Hot Take Hockey, back with another video. This video is my 2023-2024 NHL Fantasy Hockey preview predictions. In this video, I'll be including my must picks, busts, breakout players, sleepers, anything across the board for fantasy hockey. You got it on this video. So if you're a new subscriber, welcome. And if you haven't yet, definitely hit that subscribe button for more fantasy hockey content or hockey content in general. Doing a lot of live streams and videos. Hit that like button and definitely drop your comments or fantasy questions down below. Let's get right into it. I'm going to go over the top, I think it's 250 fantasy hockey list on NHL.com and just give you my opinion and predictions on players. And then it says 250 there. And we'll rip through as I said, my must picks. A few bust picks. I don't really like going too heavy on the bust picks because I feel like a lot of players, if they're in the ranking conversation, they're there for a reason. I think some players are higher for a reason. I think some players might not get utilized properly, so I'll talk about that. But in terms of breakout players, I think I have heavy opinions on that. I'll talk about some bounce back candidates in those breakout or in terms of sleeper picks as well. So just keep an eye on that, but we'll go through the list. So going through the top 250, I mean, there's obvious ones. When you talk about McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Kucherov, Pasternak, Matthew Tkachuk, obvious ones. I would jump Matthews into the top 5, top 6. So Matthews top 7. I see Matthews as the higher ceiling than Tkachuk, Robertson, Rantanen, and even Jack Hughes. But the thing where I love Jack Hughes here is that he's got the center and left wing capability. If that's in your fantasy hockey, I'm telling you right now, draft Jack Hughes top 10. If he can play center and wing as you're drafting for fantasy hockey, pick Jack Hughes easy top 10. But Matthews, I just think he's going to bounce back. Like in a bad year, he scored 40 goals. I think we're going to see more from him this year. So I would have Matthews in that top 10 easily, probably top 6, top 7. Crosby is the risk because we just don't know when he's going to have that downfall. But I feel like Crosby's going to have a great year. I would say 85, 90 plus points. So you're guaranteed with that. Get Crosby in your top 15. So I think if you're doing a 12-man draft, for example, and you have like the 12 and 13 spot, if you could pull, and in this order, if you could pull Crosby and like Makar with your 12-13 pick, do that in a heartbeat, no doubt about it. I'd have Makar higher on this list as well. You want to have a stud defense. When I draft, I always go for a stud defense or two, and I try to go heavy on my defense because if you can get steals at forward later in the draft, and you could build a stud defense group, it's gonna do you well later on in the season. So if you can draft Makar or Adam Fox in the second round, you're laughing. I think in terms of goaltending here, I think Vasilevsky should probably be ahead of Shesterkin and Sorokin just because of the team. I'm more confident Tampa is going to have a more successful year than Sorokin, and you also have to keep in mind Sorokin has Varlamov behind him, right? I think when you talk about Varlamov, he's going to play 20-plus games easy. I don't know if I'm saying the same about Tampa's backup. I could see Vasilevsky playing 65-plus games, which is crazy to say, but I could see it. Going through the rest of this list, the only guys I'd be careful of, I mean, Rupe Hintz, to me, has gone from underrated to a stud so quickly, so he's not even underrated anymore. The fact that he's on this top 25 list, to me, is still crazy because I see other guys that are going to put up bigger goal numbers probably. If Stamkos stays healthy, I would take Stamkos pretty high, especially if he has the wing on his position. Right now, he just has center. Nylander, I think that's a little too high for Nylander considering the year he had, but he's on a contract year, so he could probably repeat it. It's crazy how Erik Karlsson's stock has gone up. I mean, I swear last year he was probably not even in the top 150, and now he's at 33 on these rankings. I would put Roman Josi a little higher here. Again, I'm pretty high on some of these defensemen. Miro Heiskanen, I think, is a must-have, so I would have him higher than even like a guy like Dougie, to be honest. I think Miro's going to have a great year. Connor Bedard might be a little high when you're looking at other guys that are below him. But, I mean, there's some must picks here that I would not miss out on. Like Quinn Hughes, the fact that he's not in the top 50, I think is crazy. I think Quinn Hughes is going to have a magic year. Kyle Connor is going to put up crazy amount of goals. So, I would say as a winger, Kyle Connor should probably be higher here. And I think it's actually crazy, to be honest, that a guy like Kyle Connor, the goals that he's put up, the point totals that he's put up, is below Connor Bedard. I just think it's, like I said, I think Bedard could put up 70, 80 points this year and no one should be shocked. But like Kyle Connor is probably a lock for that, right? So you just have to keep that in mind for fantasy. I think Bedard's a good pick. Obviously, I think he's going to have a great year. But you also just have to keep in mind the company you have around you and also the success of the team. I feel like you can only do so much if you're on a poor team. So maybe Chicago surprises us. But there's also guys down here that I feel like should be way higher. Like Victor Hedman didn't have the production he's had in the past, but I think Hedman should be a top 50 fantasy player. If you have Hedman available in your third round in a 12-man league, take Hedman. Like, if you could come out of the third round and have the two defensemen of Makar and Hedman, like, that's crazy. There's other ones that are further down that I saw that are must picks for me. Like, Hellebuck is a must pick because he's going to play so many games in a contract year. I think DeBrincat's a must pick because he's going to be the primary option in Detroit right next to Larkin. I think Gensel's a must pick when he comes back from injury, so keep an eye on Gensel's timeline. But if you can get Gensel later in your draft, I mean, that could be a sleeper pick in some sense. But, I mean, he's a must pick at some point. And then there's other guys here that I feel like are must picks if they play a full season. But it depends how you look at a must pick. Like, Samsonov, to me, is probably a must pick because if the Leafs finish top 2 in the Atlantic, which I think is a good chance that happens, and Samsonov plays at least 65% of the games, that's a must pick. There's other guys here, too, that, I mean, Caulfield, if he plays a full season in Montreal, he's going to be their number 1 point producer, likely. So, going past that, I would say my must picks in here, there's probably a few I would jump into the top 60, top 70, but I would say you're probably looking at must picks here, finishing at about Quinn Hughes, Clayton Keller. Those are must picks for me. I'm not as high on some of these other guys. Like Evander Kane, it really depends who he plays with. Same with Svechnikov. I think Boldy's going to have a great year. But then again, Hyman, it depends who he plays with. So I'm kind of rambling through the list here. But your main must picks are probably in this top 20 here. And I really do think a guy like Elias Pettersson, you should be high on. I think a guy like Braden Point. I got Braden Point as a steal last year. Like, I think in the 70 or 80 spot of the draft last year, Braden Point was still available, and I scooped him up, and I was laughing. So Braden Point should not fall past like spot 30 in your draft. He should be a top 30 selection in any fantasy draft. So that's kind of my overall summary. Be careful on age, look for goal scoring, and look for bounce back candidates like an Austin Matthews who scored 40 goals in a bad year. So if that's the floor for Austin Matthews, you should have no doubt about picking Matthews in the top 7. That's my opinion. So let's go into some potential sleepers. Jamie Drysdale coming back from injury could be the number 1 power play option for Anaheim. That's got to be a pickup for you, especially if you're lacking defense later in your draft. That's a top option. Same thing with Sean Durzi with Arizona. They just acquired him. So when you're talking about Durzi, when you're talking about Drysdale, those are options that you can get later in your draft as like a 3rd, 4th defense option, and you'll get power play points. I think Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayton in Arizona, again, if Clayton Keller is your must option, those guys will play with him and get production. So sleeper picks potentially later in the draft. Pavel Zacha, not a big name, especially if you're a casual hockey fan. You're going to look at Pavel Zacha and be like, why is this guy ranked? But if he plays between Marchand and Pasternak for a good chunk of the year, that's going to be a must sleeper pick. So look out for Pavel Zacha. Casey Middlestat, I was kind of thinking if you're still sleeping on Dylan Cousins as somewhat of a sleeper, I mean, wake up. And if Casey Middlestat plays with him, I think Casey Middlestat could have a huge breakout year potentially. Devin Levi, I'm just seeing him as a sleeper because I feel like we haven't seen a lot of him. Like, he just stepped into the scene as a conversation. And yes, Buffalo has other options in goaltending like Luukkonen and Comrie, but I think Devin Levi will become the guy if he stays healthy, and if he stays on that projection, will become a sleeper pick because I think he'll get the games in. Noah Hannafin with Calgary. I think Hannafin on a contract year really needs to show that he is a 2-3 option on a team. And if there's a chance he gets power play time, a chance he gets heavy minutes, he could be a sleeper. But my big sleeper is Mackenzie Weegar, because whether he becomes a big leader on this team or power play opportunity, him and Huberdeau are sleepers here. Coming from Florida, disappointing years. I think both guys will bounce back in a big way. So they're your bounce back candidates here, but also huge sleeper picks. Taylor Hall's got to be a sleeper pick here. If he plays with Connor Bedard, he's a sleeper pick. Also, Reichel, there's a lot of guys here that could be sleeper picks on Chicago if they get time with Bedard. So keep an eye on that. I would also say Taylor Radish. I think he put up like 20 goals. So you know what? Just keep an eye on who's playing with Connor Bedard at any given time and who's also getting number 1 power play time on that Hawks team, because it's open, right? So Taylor Hall is definitely the one that's the obvious one because I think he's guaranteed to get the time on the power play and with Bedard. Jonathan Drouin's a sleeper pick for obvious reasons. Had the junior experience with Nathan McKinnon, with Halifax, coming into Colorado looking for a bounce back opportunity. And if he gets power play time, especially with that left wing a little weaker, Gabriel Landeskog out for the year, Jonathan Drouin could be a sleeper here, folks. Kirill Marchenko, Boone Jenner, Patrick Laine. You could go down the list with Columbus, but there are so many sleeper options for the Blue Jackets. Johnny Gaudreau is the bigger name there. Patty Laine is a big name, but he's a bounce-back candidate here. The only reason I say he's a sleeper is because I don't see him in too many top 100 rankings. And I feel like when we talk about Patrick Laine's goal capabilities, it's such a high-risk, high-reward selection here. If Patrick Laine is available later in your draft and people are sleeping on him because of the injury concerns, because of the inconsistencies, I would just say scoop him. Because if he booms this year, he is going to be a huge selection for you if you get him later. Marchenko put up 20-something goals last year in less than 60 games with Columbus. Has shown it as a 23-year-old over a point per game in the AHL. If he gets number one power play time, like I said, him or Laine will put up goals. And if Laine is injured, Marchenko is that guy that has a crazy shot. Boone Jenner, and I would even say Adam Fantilli, whoever's centering that top line, if it's with Gaudreau and Laine, that could be a huge option for you. Wyatt Johnson's still not being talked about enough, guys. He had a huge year. He showed up in the playoffs, and he could be the number 2 center in Dallas behind Roope Hintz. So if Hintz was underrated before as the number 2 guy, he's the number 1 guy. The number 2 guy in Dallas now is Wyatt Johnson. Look out for him later in your draft. Ville Husso, Reimer Husso is the tandem in Detroit now. I feel like Husso, though, could take the reins. He showed really good signs last year. If the Red Wings could be, I would say, top half of the Atlantic Division, get a lot of wins, Husso could get a lot of starts. But Lucas Raymond, Johnny Berggren, I just feel like whoever gets the power play time, and it's probably Lucas Raymond, and also keep this in mind. Between Lucas Raymond, Berggren, and I would probably say David Perron, those are probably your options to play with DeBrincat and Larkin. Whoever gets that number 1 line spot, you take them as a sleeper, 100%. I didn't put David Perron on this list because I feel like he's played really well and he's shown well. He shouldn't be that much of a sleeper still, but still, I think people have him outside of their top 150 rankings. So Raymond, Berggren, Perron, whoever gets the number 1 power play time and number 1 line 5-on-5, take that guy. So it could be Raymond, it could be Perron, whichever it is, take it. Connor Brown, if he plays with McDavid, the Erie days, lock him up later in your draft. That's going to be a steal. Gustav Forsling and OEL. Whoever gets the number 1 power play time with Montour and Ekblad out to start the year, take them. Because they'll get a lot of minutes even when those guys get back. And if they lock down a number 1 power play spot, they'll probably lock down a top 4 spot as well. Spencer Knight, there's an asterisk next to here because he is coming back. He's been out for a while. So I just want to say, keep in mind the Florida tandem's a little risky for my liking. I don't know if I'm necessarily looking at Bobrovsky or Knight. I think Florida just squeaked into the playoffs. They have to show me in a full year that they're a consistent playoff team with their new roster construction. And also, as I said, they don't have Montour or Ekblad, who were huge pieces to them last year. It depends on how long those guys are out. But I'm just going to be careful with the goaltending. But Spencer Knight, if a lot of people are just forgetting about him, he could be a sleeper. Cam Talbot, Phoenix Copley, I just think with the LA Kings, how good they could be, if you wanted to lock down those 2 goalies as you get 1 consistent goalie and then you have 2 and 3 with the LA Kings goalies and you have 3 goalies like that, it could be a sleeper option for you and you get stacked in the forward and defense positions and then get those 2 guys later and then the Kings will get wins. So you'll get wins from those guys. Fleury's a sleeper for me because Gustafsson, it seems like he's taking the starter role, but I just think Fleury's going to get his starts. This one, again, another asterisk because I don't know how good Minnesota's going to be this year. Kirby Dach is another one that it depends where he plays, but if he plays with Suzuki and Caulfield and gets power play time, he could be a steal. He could be a sleeper pick in your draft. Tommy Novak, he's put up consistent numbers and showed really well in the second half of the year with Nashville. If he gets top 6 time with the Preds, maybe power play time, he could be a sleeper for you. Akira Schmid, it just depends where he's at for the Devils and how you see him. I think some people see Vanacek is maybe just the guy that's going to get the 50-50 starts with him, or maybe he just fully takes the reins. But it's another scenario where the Devils are a cup contender here. So if you get both Devils goaltending, you're going to get a lot of wins regardless. It's just taking up another roster spot. But Schmid's a guy that, as a casual hockey fan, if you're watching, you could look at this guy in a league where a lot of people don't know hockey and just be like, okay, people don't know this guy. They don't know the name. He's not a recognizable name. Draft Schmid if he's available later. Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Islanders. I think Nelson's one of the most underrated players in the league. I think when Barzal's struggling, these two guys step up for goal scoring. I think just keep an eye on the Islanders guys, especially these two guys here. Noah Dobson, another scenario where it's like he needs to step up. If he's the number one power play guy, keep an eye on it. Alexi Lafreniere, I just feel like the Rangers, there's not too many sleeper options here. I feel like you know the Rangers producers and you know who's not. Lafreniere and Kakko have always been the guys in between. Lafreniere needs to break out at some point. Why not this year? Tarasenko for the Sens. Anton Forsberg for the Sens. Forsberg, if Korpisalo doesn't play as well as expectations, or if it's just a 50-50 tandem, maybe Forsberg's 40% of the starts. That could be a sleeper pick. And Tarasenko, if he's top 6, number 1 power play, which is possible with that shot, they might want Tarasenko on that right side over a guy like Batherson potentially. So between Tarasenko and Batherson, whoever gets that number 1 power play time, Cam York, number 1 power play time potentially. So that's another option of just keep an eye on guys on the number 1 power play. Cam York could be a breakout candidate this year. Riley Smith, Pittsburgh, if he plays with Crosby. Owen Tippett, Morgan Frost showed really well last year. They're heating up in Philly. And Philip Grubauer, Seattle. I just think if he's the number 1 guy, Seattle will get some wins. Eberle and Burakovsky. We didn't see Burakovsky towards the end. I mean, he was injured. I think between Eberle and Burakovsky, again, number 1 line, number 1 power play unit. Keep an eye on those guys. Binner and Hofer. Joel Hofer, it could break out here, but don't sleep on the Blues completely. And whoever takes the reins on that goaltending list there. Kevin Hayes, just acquired. If he's in the top 6, he was showing well for Philly. Anthony Duclair, Thomas Hertl, Logan Couture. Those are the Sharks producers. Keep an eye on that. Mario Ferraro and Jacob McDonald. The Sharks are so thin on defense. Jacob McDonald actually put some good production up in the AHL, and he's got some size. Maybe he puts up some hits for you and power play time. But Mario Ferraro could also be on the number 1 power play. So between those guys, number 1 power play, hits, blocks from Mario Ferraro. Keep an eye on that. Brandon Hagel, Connor Sheary. Those guys have to step up for Tampa. Hagel had a great year, just signed a long-term extension. He could be the guy if he's on that top line and top power play, but also keep an eye on Connor Sheary. He's had that experience in the past. Bertuzzi, Domi, I mean, obvious reasons. They're the snot that Trey Living brought in, but they're also going to fill in the gaps in the top 6, and Bertuzzi potentially on the top power play. Klingberg could be the number 1 power play over Morgan Riley, so we'll see. But I think it just really depends on if Klingberg can bounce back and get that time with the Toronto Stars. Brock Besser, I call him a sleeper because I think at some point he's going to go off of this scoring again, and it's just the consistency things with Besser. Thompson Hill, the tandem in Vegas. I don't think either or is regarded as like a number 1 right now going into the season, but if you draft both, you're looking decent. Barbashev, if he plays with Eichel for the full year and also power play time maybe. Rasmus Sandin, maybe he splits power play time with John Carlson in top 4 minutes. Pacioretty and Tom Wilson, they're on the top power play, both of them, and up there for minutes on forward group. I just feel like Tom Wilson with the hits, with just the numbers he puts up, I feel like either or. I mean, one of those guys I think will put up some nice goal scoring. And Gabe Vilardi with Winnipeg, I think you could go a few guys there. I think Scheifele's not regarded as high as he once was, so look out for that. But Vilardi's the guy that could really break out for Winnipeg. And if you just go on quickly, my breakout candidates, I already made this video, so go check out the video on the channel, but I also just wanted to include this on here. So just keep an eye on my breakout candidates for the season. In terms of busts, I don't want to go too much into it, but I mean, there's a few guys on this list that I just wanted to outline. One guy I wanted to talk about was Letang, and I mean, the Carlson thing just with the Penguins, it worries me a bit. The Carlson and Burns experiment in San Jose didn't work to their expectations. I wonder if Carlson coming in really takes away from Letang's production. Also, there's a few guys that like really went off last year. Like, will Buchnevich be able to repeat what he did last year? I'm not sure. Will a guy, if we're going through this list too, will a guy like Kevin Fiala be able to repeat his production? I mean, he's ranked 68 on this list. Same with Carter Verhaeghe. I think he's going to break out even more. But again, ranked that high, especially if they're already like slotted in on your fantasy draft and you kind of just see them coming up, people might just get hungry there. I think guys like JT Miller and Pavelski will put up production. So not worried about those guys too much. But another guy that, is ranked really high here is Nico Hischier. He's ranked at 50 here, and he's going to have to spread out the production from guys coming in like Timo Meier and Tyler Toffoli. So the production's going to have to get spread out. The only guaranteed guy that I'm really confident in New Jersey is Jack Hughes. I think even a guy like Bratt, they always talk about Bratt's always improving every season, and hey, he might put up more points this year. But I just wouldn't draft those guys super high because you got to spread the wealth in New Jersey. And the only guy to me that's guaranteed heavy production and close to 100 points potentially is Jack Hughes. So there's just things like that. And obviously the goaltending in New Jersey, I feel like New Jersey's probably going to be a top 3 team in the Metro, but they have so many scoring options. So Jack Hughes is my only lock for that. But outside of that, as I said, I'm worried about the Florida goaltending a bit. And yeah, I would just say keep an eye on teams that have a lot of wealth to spread around. That's why I look at a team like Chicago, and Taylor Hall for me should be a pick you look at because he's with Bedard. He's a number 1 scoring option. He's a number 1 power play option. Those guys look out for. So thank you so much for watching this fantasy hockey video, the preview video for the Hot Take Hockey channel 2023-2024 NHL season. If you want to reach out, ask me any questions, especially down in the comments. And if you're a new subscriber, as I said, I hope to see you more on the channel. We'll talk soon. Good luck on drafting. Peace.